Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Whether the screen is visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So let's start our session today. So in the today's session, we are going to deal with relational data model and database languages. So we'll be just introducing you the relational data model and the database languages. As this unit actually deals with the introduction to the various different concepts of databases, we are not going into the details of any concept. Only you should be aware of various terminologies in the databases and various different aspects of database management systems, and that is why we are going to introduce the concepts and terms. So prior to begin this session, let us have a recap what we did in last session. So in the last session we talked about various data models: ER model, relational model, object-based data model, semi-structured data model, and we have just mentioned few older models as well. Out of all these models, as I mentioned, we are going to focus upon ER model and relational data model in this course of database engineering. So in the last session we had introduction to ER model also. So what is ER model? ER stands for entity relationship. In ER model, we are having two important concepts, and that is the entity and the relationship. So what is entity? It is anything or object that can be distinguished from the other. So we have listed few of the examples of entities, and those are, say, instructor is entity, course is entity, student is one more entity. So every entity is described by some set of properties or attributes. Say for example, if I want to describe entity, say instructor, then I'll be describing it with the attributes ID, name, salary, and so on. Okay, if I want to describe course, then I'll be describing a course like course ID or course code, course name, the credits allotted for that course, and so on. So this is how we are going to describe the entities, and every entity is described with the attributes. Then we talked about the relationship. So we may have the relationship between two entities. Say for example, if I am having the entity as student and entity as instructor, they are associated with one another via some kind of a relationship. For example, the instructor is working as the advisor for the student. I'll repeat, instructor is working as an advisor for a student or for a set of students. So this is a relationship between the instructor and the student, right? We have mentioned entity set and relationship set. So if we collect several entities together and if we form a set of those entities, then in ER model it is known as the entity set. Say for example, if I collect several instructors together, then it is entity set. Similarly, if I collect several relationships together, then it is denoted as relationship set. Also, we have seen that ER model is a graphical representation of overall structure of a database system. It is a graphical representation, and typically ER model is represented in the form of a diagram. So it is a diagrammatic representation. So to draw the diagram, we are going to make use of several symbols. So what are those notations or symbols? We are having rectangle that is used to denote entity set, ellipse to denote attribute, diamond to denote relationship among the entity sets, and we are having line that is actually linking the attributes to the entity sets, or it would also link the entity sets to the relationship. So we are making use of such kinds of notations, right, to draw the ER diagrams. We have seen one example also, a simple example of ER model. So see here, we have described here only two entity sets, and those are instructor and the student. These two are the entity sets. So instructor entity set is having the attributes like ID, name of the instructor and salary. Whereas student is the entity set with three attributes once again: ID of the student, name and total credits, right? So these ID, name and total credits are nothing but the attributes of entity set student. Similarly, for instructor, we are having three attributes. Okay. Now, we would like to relate instructor with student. So there is an association between instructor and the student. As I mentioned, one instructor may work as advisor for the set of students, right? Or in other words, we may say that one student is having one advisor who is an instructor, right? So to relate these two entity sets, we are having the relationship. So this advisor is the relationship. Okay. Now, in ER model, in addition to depicting the entity sets and the relationship between the entity sets, we are having some way to depict the constraints on the relationships. So here, if you look at these two numbers, here we have mentioned 1 at the instructor side, and at the other side, at the student side, we have mentioned n. So what we mean by this 1 and n? In fact, in the last session, I have mentioned that this 1 n is actually describing a constraint on the relationship. So this constraint is known as mapping cardinality. Just have a note of that. It is mapping cardinality. So what we mean by that? Instructor and students are associated with the relationship advisor. So if I look at this relationship from instructor to student, I may say that this relationship is one to many. N stands for many. So I'm saying that this relationship is one to many. What I mean by that? Relationship is one to many. This means that one instructor is associated with many number of students. One instructor is associated with many number of students, right? In other words, or in other perspective, if I look at this relationship from student to instructor, then towards instructor it is 1. Okay, so I may say that one student is associated with one instructor, not many. One student is associated with one instructor. See, at this moment, this is just the introduction. Whenever we are going to deal with ER diagrams in detail, we are going to focus upon these concepts at depth. So this is just for introduction. So as I mentioned, in ER models, we are representing the constraints, and one kinds of constraints, those we may have, are the mapping cardinalities. Those are meaningful for defining the relationships between the entity sets. Now, in fact, ER model is the stepping stone. ER model is the first step towards designing a database. So once our ER model is ready with us, then usually it is converted to the relational data model. So with the help of, see, whenever we develop any project, what are the important steps? Initially, we gather the information. Okay, so if I want to build a database management system or the application for a typical enterprise, what I'll be doing first? I'll be gathering the information related to that enterprise. So once I'm having that information with me, I'll analyze that information and then I'll come up with ER model, a diagrammatic representation of the database. Okay, so after having this diagrammatic representation of the database or the conceptual model of the database in the form of ER diagram, then after approval of this ER diagram, I am going to convert my ER model into a relational model. How I am going to do that? I am going to apply certain rules to do that. We are going to focus upon everything later, but just remember these steps. So after ER model, we are going to design the relational model, right? And the relational model actually is being used for practical implementation of database. So ER model is the conceptual model. With the help of ER model, actually we are diagrammatically representing the design of the database. This design of a database will be converted to the relational data model, and this relational data model actually we are going to implement by making use of any of the database management systems, right? So let us proceed now with the relational data model. So relational data model actually is a collection of tables to represent data as well as the relationships among those data. So what we mean by that? In the ER model, we had two entity sets and one relationship. We have seen one example of a ER model. So what we had there? We had instructor as the entity set, we had student as another entity set, and we had a relationship between these two entity sets. And what was that relationship? It was the advisor relationship. So in relational model, we are having, or we are going to represent this data or those entity sets as well as the relationship between the entity sets in the form of a table. So we'll be having, for instructor we'll be having one table, for student we'll be having one table, and for advisor, that is the relationship, for advisor also we'll be having one table in my relational model. So relational model actually is the example of a record-based model. So the data related to the entities or the relationships in ER model is being represented in the form of a record in a table. Okay, so relational model is example of a record-based model. So the instructors are being stored in the form of records, the students are being stored in the form of records, and also the relationship between them is also stored in the form of a record. And this relational model is actually most widely used data model whenever we build any database management system. So this is the example of a relational model for the ER model that we just represented. So in this course, we are going to make use of the university database model, right, as a running example of our database. So from that university database, we are having these three tables. The ER model that we discussed was also some part of the university model that we discussed as example. So with respect to that ER model, now whenever that ER model gets converted into the relational model, we are having something in the form of tables. So just look at this. This is the instructor table. So we have here 4 attributes, okay, denoting the properties of that instructor. So if you look at this table, what we are having 4 columns. So one column is representing the attribute of my table. So ID is the attribute, name is the attribute, department name is the attribute, and salary is also the attribute. Okay, so this instructor table is having these 4 attributes. An individual instructor is described using this record. So what we have in this record is having the values associated with every attribute. So this is the first record. So this first record describes the data for the instructor, say Srinivasan. So name of the instructor is Srinivasan, ID of the instructor is 10101, department of the instructor is computer science, and this is the salary of the instructor. So this is how individual records are being maintained in the table. So individual record is one instructor. If we look at this another table, this is a table for student. So if I want to store the information of the student in the relational model, I'll be creating a table like this. So once again, I'm having the attributes as the columns of the table, and we are having the records. So records are depicting the values for these attributes. Okay, and one row or one record is meaningful for individual student here. Similarly, if I would like to relate these two entity sets, so in ER diagram these were the entity sets, right? In relational model we are having 2 tables storing actually the data. Okay, in relational model these tables are known as the relations. Every table is known as the relation in relational model, and that is why the name relational model. So every table is known as the relation in relational model. Okay, in ER diagram the word relation is being used to depict the association between 2 entity sets, right? But in the relational model, every entity set as well as every relationship in the ER model is represented with one table, and that table is also named as relation in my relational model. So the advisor relationship is denoted here once again in the form of table. So what we have in this relationship table, we are having here 2 IDs. One is meant for student and another is meant for instructor. So with the help of this table, it is possible for me to find out the relationship between the student and instructor. So which student is associated with which instructor? Correct? So say for example, here I am having student ID 00128. So this student ID, if I refer to the student table, this ID belongs to the student Zhang. Okay, so this student with ID 128 is related with the instructor with ID 45565. So if I find out that ID in instructor table, here I am having that 45565 and the instructor name is Cats. So the student Zhang is associated with the instructor Cats. But while maintaining the table, we are only maintaining the data related to the IDs because IDs are unique, right? So this is how in general we maintain the data in relational model. I hope you have got the insight of a relational model. We are going to discuss the relational model at depth in unit number 2. Okay, this is just for your information, how actually the data is being stored in the relational model. So I hope you must have understood the concept. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Unmute yourself and ask the questions. Yes. Any doubt so far? If no, then we may proceed. Shall I proceed?
Yeah.
Okay. So let us proceed now to the database languages. So as far as database languages are considered, we are having two categories of the languages that we may have. So database system provides a database or a data definition language known as DDL, data definition language, and this language is used to specify the database schema. DDL is actually used to specify, to define the database schema. Also, we are having data manipulation language known as or abbreviated as DML. So data definition language abbreviated as DDL and data manipulation language abbreviated as DML. Data manipulation language. So data manipulation language is used to express database queries and updates. So if we want to input data, if we want to delete data, if we want to update the data into the table, or if we want to retrieve the data, if we want to access the data, then we are making use of the DML, that is the data manipulation language. And while specifying the design of the database, while defining the tables, while defining the constraints, we are making use of data definition language. Are you getting me? Please respond.
Yes, ma'am.
So, data definition language is meant for specifying the database schema, defining the database schema. Data manipulation language is meant for queries and updations in the database. So, if we want to manipulate the data in the database, then we go for DML, data manipulation language. If we want to create the structure, if we want to create the database schema, then we go for data definition language. Languages in these two forms, that means data definition language and data manipulation language. These two parts of database languages are combined together and we come up with the structured query language or SQL. So DDL and DML form the parts of the single database language, which is popularly known as structured query language, SQL. Okay, so SQL comprises of DDL as well as DML. May I proceed? Is there any doubt? Yes. Is there any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Shraddha, roll number 321. Will you please explain me what you have understood about database languages?
There are two types. One is a data definition language, this is DDL. In this DDL, data to specify the database schema, and second is data manipulation language, that is DML. In this, express database queries and updates.
Okay, good. So let us proceed with, and both of these languages, DDL and DML, are combined together and we name it as structured query language, SQL. So SQL is having these two parts, DDL and DML. Okay, so let's proceed now with one example of data definition language statement. So one of the statements in DDL, that is data definition language, is a create table statement. So if I want to create a table for a student, I am making use of this data definition language. So how I am going to write this statement? I am writing this statement like create table. Create table is the statement. Student is name of the table that I would like to create. Okay. There is a typical syntax to provide this statement. So I am using create table statement. Name of the table is student, and in parenthesis I will be providing the definition for this student table. Okay. So what I mean by definition of student table, I need to describe now the attributes of this table student along with the domain or the data type. Okay, so I am having ID as the attribute of student table. So ID is of type varchar and the size is 5. What I mean by that, varchar is one of the data types in database management systems. We are not going into the details right now. Just remember, it is kind of a character data type. So it is possible for me to store character data in this attribute ID. And what this number indicates, this indicates the size. Meaning, I may store at the max 5 characters. Okay, as the value for this ID. So ID is the attribute of type varchar with size 5. So this is how I am specifying and defining the attribute ID of my student table. Similarly, I am having name as another attribute. Varchar is the type, 20 is the size, and this is the constraint that I am providing. So not null is the constraint. What it indicates, I do not want to have null value for name. So that is the constraint. So I want to validate whether the user who is inputting the data, whether if he is not inputting name, then it will give me the alert, or it will, my database system will validate whether there exists the name. Unless and until user inputs the name, it will not proceed further. Okay, or it will show me the error that name is not present, because I have validated this attribute. I have the constraint for that attribute. Name should not be null. So name always must have some value associated. Okay. Similarly, I am having third attribute, that is department name, once again of type varchar and size 20. Fourth attribute, I am having total credit. It is of type numeric, right? And I'm having here the precision for this number. So I would like to store a 3-digit number as, so maximum 3-digit number as the total credit. And I'm having here the default value for total credit as 0. So if I'm not inputting anything for total credit, by default the number 0 will be the value of total credit. Is that clear? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
So may I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is
Yes, ma'am.
one kind of DDL statement. This is one kind of DDL statement that is being used to create a table. Correct? So let us proceed with few next concept related. Yes?
As we return for name that's not null, can we return for ID and department name as it is?
ID, if you want to put a constraint for ID also, then you may have that constraint. Any attribute may have the constraint depending on our need. Okay? We may provide the default value for any of the attributes. We may provide any constraint for the attribute. Okay? So depending on whatever is the requirement, we are going to create the table. We are going to provide the definition for that table. Okay?
That 3,0, I didn't understand.
3,0. Okay. So this is, as I mentioned, this is the number. Total credit is the number. So the data type that we are having in SQL or data definition language is numeric. So we are mentioning here numeric, and 3 means we may have maximum 3 digits. Okay. So the highest number that we can store is 999. Okay, and this is the precision actually. So 0 if we want to store a floating point number, right? So we are having some decimal places, right? So what would be the precision that is required? How many decimal places we need? That we can mention here as the second part of this numeric attribute. Okay, so this is the precision. So how many digits we would like to have after decimal place? So in this case, we do not want any decimal place. No? It is total credits. It is always the integer value. So we do not want actually the decimal places. And that is why we have mentioned here 0.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So let us proceed with the next. Whenever we create any table, okay, whenever I am creating any table, this definition of the table is being stored in my data dictionary. I am going to repeat the thing. Whenever I am creating any table, definition of this table is stored in my data dictionary, and data dictionary is actually storing the metadata. So metadata, you might have heard about this term, or you might be knowing this term, metadata. Metadata is data about data. Okay, so whenever I'm creating a table, the definition of the table is being stored in my data dictionary. So using DDL, I'm creating entire database schema. So whatever are the tables, those I have created, whatever are the constraints, those I have provided, all these definitions, all this data about data, that is the metadata, it's stored in data dictionary. How we are going to look at this later. but this is just remember these concepts right now. Okay, so all the definitions or all the data about data, all the metadata is being stored in data dictionary. Okay, now similar to or one of the parts of the data definition language is data storage and definition language. Data storage and definition language. So it is, you may say, it is a kind of spatial kind of statement under DDL, and that is known as data storage and definition language. So these statements actually define the implementation details of the database schemas. I'll be repeating what these statements or what this language does. Data storage and definition language. The statements under storage and definition language define the implementation details of the database schemas. Implementation details. What we mean by implementation details? Using DDL, we are actually describing definitions of the tables or the constraints those we are putting on various attributes or the data. But how actually that data is being stored in the storage device? What are the storage mechanisms used? Right? So that kind of information, implementation details, are being defined by making use of storage and definition language. And usually this is hidden from the users. So only the database administrators are knowing the details about that. The users of the database system are not knowing. So this part of the data is hidden from the users. Okay. Now, I hope the concept is clear. So this is the language in which the storage structure and the access methods used by the database system are specified, and usually this is hidden from the normal user. And this is the extension, as I mentioned, this is part of DDL. This is extension of data definition language. Now let's proceed further with the consistency constraints those we may provide by making use of data definition language. So as I stated earlier, data definition language provides some kinds of consistency constraints or integrity constraints. We have seen one such constraint while defining the table student, right? And that constraint was actually the domain constraint. Whatever constraint that we discussed while defining a table, while creating a table, was a domain constraint. So what are constraints actually? Constraints are used to impose certain conditions. Many times we need to validate our data against certain constraints or against certain conditions. So there are the facilities provided by DDL, data definition language, that will allow us to provide such consistency constraints or integrity constraints. So we are having different kinds of these integrity constraints. There are 4 kinds of integrity constraints we may have. Number 1, domain constraints. Number 2, referential integrity constraints. Number 3, assertions. And number 4, authorization constraints. So I'm just going to introduce what we mean by those constraints. Okay. So we had a discussion about domain constraints actually. So what we mean by a domain? Domain represents the set of possible values for the given type of attribute. For example, whenever we are defining a table, What we mentioned? We mentioned attribute name ID and we associated that ID with the data type character. Right? So whenever I am saying that ID is of type character, then I need to input only character data, right, as the value for ID. Whenever I am saying that total credit, one of the attributes of the student, total credits. So total credits is having the domain associated or data type associated as number. What does this mean? This means that I am imposing the domain constraint here. So this is a simple form of constraint actually. Most elementary form of constraint that I am imposing on my data. So whenever I declare that total credit is of type number, this means that whenever I am inputting the data for that attribute, only numeric data will be accepted. If I try to input character data for total credits, then it will not be accepted. So this is one elementary constraint, one elementary integrity constraint that I am imposing while defining my table. Correct? So associated with the attribute, I am also specifying the domain. So domain actually describes the set of values those are allowed for that particular attribute. So valid set of values, okay, is been provided by this domain constraint. So if the attribute is of type number, then only numeric values are allowed. So that is the domain which is describing the set of values those are allowed for that particular attribute. Okay, and whenever I am inputting or modifying the data in my table, then always this domain constraint is validated. It is being checked automatically because we have imposed that integrity constraint while creating the table. So every time whenever I am modifying the data or whenever I am inserting the data, these domain constraints are being checked by my system. Okay, so that is one kind of a constraint. Next, the referential integrity. So what we mean by referential integrity? There are certain cases where we wish to ensure that a value that appears in one relation for a given set of attributes also appears in certain set of attributes in another relation as well. What I mean by that? Let us go back to our relational model tables. Okay, so see here, I am having here instructor table and I am having department name. For student also I am having department name, right? But even though it has not been depicted here, I am having separate table to store the departments, wherein I am having several attributes. One of the attributes of my department table is department name. So this is my department table and I am having department name here. Okay, so other than these three tables in my university schema, I am having one more table, department, and in department I am having department name. Then I may have other attributes like the building where that department is located, then the budget for the department. So these are other attributes for my department table. Okay, now what is referential integrity? We are talking about referential integrity. In my student table or in my instructor table, I am having department name. Okay, but if I try to input one student with say computer science department, Okay, so I am inputting here department name as computer science. But what my referential integrity ensures? My referential integrity ensures if I am inputting department name here as computer science, it will make sure that whether this computer science department exists in my department table. So I must have computer science as one of the records here in my department table. Then and then only it is allowed for me to use that department name here in my student table or in my instructor table. If that computer science department is not available in my department table, then my system will give me the error, referential integrity violated. What it indicates? It indicates that whatever department name you are trying to have in student table, that department name is not available in my department table. So unless I input computer science department in my department table, it is not allowed to use that as the department name in student table or in instructor table. So in my department table, initially I'll be inputting all the records related to various departments in my university. Okay, and after having those departments present in my department table, only then it is possible for me to use that anywhere in other departments. And this concept is known as referential integrity. So while inputting the data in this table, student, I am referring to the data that is already inputted in my department table. Right? So there is some kind of a relationship in between these two tables. So department name is borrowed from department table. Okay? And that is why if I refer to department name in student table, I must ensure, or my database management system must ensure, that all those values are present in my department table. If not, it will give me the error. Right? And this is called as referential integrity. It is one of the integrity constraints, and this constraint needs to be imposed to validate the data. Correct? To validate the data. So it is, if I am having such kinds of constraints imposed, then there are less possibilities that I am inputting incorrect data in my database. So to avoid inputting incorrect data, to avoid inconsistency in the data, I am imposing several integrity constraints in my database. So we have talked about domain constraint and we have talked about integrity constraint. So if you have any doubts, please let me know. Have you understood what we mean by referential integrity? Yes. Have you understood? So anybody who can answer what is referential integrity? May I ask Rushali, 332, roll number 332.
In referential integrity, we refer some means for example, as we take a department name, so department table we refer from that department table, and if the department is present in that reference department table, then only we can access it.
Yes, correct. So we are having that as the integrity constraint.
Yes.
Correct. Very good. So I hope you have understood the concept of domain constraint and referential integrity. The third kind of constraint is assertion. So assertion is any condition that the database must always satisfy. Any condition that the database must always satisfy. So domain constraint and referential integrity constraint are the special cases, you may say, of assertions. However, there are many other constraints. Those cannot be imposed by making use of domain constraint or referential integrity constraint. So such constraints are imposed by making use of assertions. For example, we are not going into the details of assertion. I'm just giving you one example of assertion. So, for example, if we want to impose a condition like every department must have at least 5 courses offered every semester. I'll repeat, every department must have at least 5 courses offered every semester. So that is one condition, and that condition need to be followed by all the departments. So while designing a database and while manipulating the data in the database, always I need to check this condition. What that condition is? Whether every department is offering minimum 5 courses every semester. So that is the condition, right? And that condition can be imposed by means of assertions. We are not going into the details of assertions. Okay, this is just for your information. So other than domain constraints and referential integrity constraints, sometimes we need to impose certain conditions that the database must always satisfy as a whole in the entirety. So we need to check whether all the departments are satisfying this condition. So that can be done by making use of assertions. And the last constraint that we are going to discuss right now, or I'm introducing you simply the integrity constraint, that is known as the authorization constraint. So authorization constraint is required to give rights to various kinds of users. So what we mean by that, many times what happens is, for a huge database management system, we are having different users. Say for example, for this university database, we are having the user like instructor is one of the users who is accessing or dealing with the data. Student is another user who is also dealing with the data or accessing the data from the same database. Correct? But now the authorization for the user instructor and for the user student might be different, or the rights provided to instructor and rights provided to the student are different. So what kind of right or what kind of a data can be accessed by what kind of a user is being defined by this authorization constraint. Okay, there are actually few kinds of authorization constraints. I'm just giving you the list of authorization constraints. We are having read authorization. You may have a note of this. We may have read authorization. So what we mean by read authorization? Read authorization are the constraints those allow reading of the database. Reading of the database. But the user who is having read authorization will not be able to modify the data in the database. So the person who is having only read authorization will only read the data but will not be able to modify the data. For example, if there is one user, say student, So student will be authorized to read the attendance data. The student will have the authorization for reading attendance data. So read authorization is available with the student for the data related to attendance. But the modification authorization will not be available with the student. Correct? So that is what we are giving some kinds of rights to some specific user. So we are having read authorization, or we are having insert authorization, we are having update authorization, or we are having delete authorization. So what we mean by that? Read authorization, simply we are allowing the users to read the data, but they are not allowed to modify the data. In case of insert authorization, the users are allowed to insert new data, but they are not allowed to modify the existing data or to delete the existing data. If the user is having update authorization, so these users will be allowed to modify the data, but they are not allowed to delete the data. If the user is having delete authorization, then that user will be allowed to delete the data from the database. So we are having read authorization, insert authorization, update authorization, or delete authorization. So depending on the nature, depending on role of the user, we are going to provide the authorization, required authorization to that particular user. So instructor may have read authorization as well as insert authorization, as well as update authorization, and also the instructor will have delete authorization. But the student will have only read authorization for specific data, say for example attendance data. Am I clear? Yes. Any doubts? Please go ahead with the doubts. Do you have any doubts? Prathamesh, roll number 316.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So what are 4 authorizations that we mentioned?
Update authorization, insert and read app authorization.
Yes.
And one more is there. Delete authorization or something.
Delete authorization, correct? So we may have read authorization, we may have insert authorization, update authorization, or delete authorization. So depending on the user, we may provide that kind of authorization to the user, so that in that way the user can manipulate the data. Correct? So overall, we have seen 4 kinds of integrity constraints: domain constraints, referential integrity, assertions, and authorization. I hope you are clear with the concepts. If not, please let me know. Yes. Okay, so let us conclude this session. I'll be posting the link for the quiz for today. Okay. I have posted the link in the chat box. and also in your group. So submit the quiz. So thank you very much. Let us stop today.